Jesus freak here. Now, you've probably seen a lot of my videos. You'd probably wonder just what the heck my religious persuasion is, other than Christian. Because it seems to be all over the place. I mean, you can see that on some things I take a rather liberal approach, and I don't really discuss things where I think I might be a bit more lenient on them than most of those who watch, because I know that a lot of people who watch me are of persuasion of the general ilk of Reformed Baptist. And yet it's pretty clear that I'm something else. I mean, should surprise no one who's seen, for example, my Good Friday videos or my Christmas Eve videos or videos like that. That there's definite Anglican tinge, definite high church tinge, which you're not going to see with someone who's Reformed Baptist. A lot of them are very iconoclastic, and they'll probably see a lot of the stuff in those videos as being a bit too Roman. I get that. Of course, my connection to Anglican tradition is sort of tangential. I myself am not an Anglican or an Episcopalian. That might surprise you when you see this come up in a lot of my videos. I'm not good at praying extemporaneously, so I'll use short prayers that come right out of here to guide myself, because, well, that's kind of what they're for. What am I myself? Well, in the broad scheme of things, I'm just a Christian. Any other terms I use are just, abbreviations, really. So say, generally I tend to be sort of high church United Methodist type. The church that I currently attend, and have attended for about 10 years now, is a United Methodist church. Not high church, not low church, about somewhere in the middle. And before that, the church I got baptized in, I've corrected a little problem that leads to the reason I use scare quotes there, was another Methodist church that no longer exists. And in fact, some of the people who went to that church now go to the church I go to now. apparently it closed down after the pastor there got caught embezzling funds. Corruption happens in any church. It's not just a Church of Rome thing. It's not just a Baptist thing. St. Paul's United Methodist Church had a problem with a corrupt pastor. It happens. And I don't think he was the pastor that baptized me. It was the pastor before him who was. Anyway, I was raised United Methodist. Since I first started going to any sort of church, in 1986, it was a United Methodist Church. That said, my family had their own take on Methodism. They were certainly influenced by the Wesley brothers, but they understood a few things differently. And my family also, they had different rules than was standard within the United Methodist Church. United Methodist Church practices radical open communion. They thought that was wrong. And in fact, for example, I was never allowed to take communion while I was with them, because they said I was too young. And even once when I was offered it, when I went to a United Methodist camp up in the Adirondacks called Camp Aldersgate, this being a term rather peculiar to Methodism, I was offered communion and I refused it because I said that at the time my faith didn't allow me to partake. And my opinions have gotten stronger and stronger over the years. I am very much a closed communion person. And most of my stance in this regard, does kind of level out with Rome. It's not exactly the same. Some people think that my stance is too liberal. For example, because I only require fasting from midnight, and not from the final, and not from dinner the night before. For example, like the Orthodox Church requires. They also require abstention from sexual activity. And they also ban anyone who's OTR from taking communion. Which I think is borderline Judaizing. My stance on baptism is, it's on par with what I was taught by my family. It's completely different from the norm within the church. I'm strictly adult credo baptism by immersion, which is extreme even among credo Baptists. that I think that baptism should be held off because of my belief that once you're baptized, you'd be judged harsher for apostatizing than if you hadn't been. For example, I believe that if you fully apostatize before baptism, you can still be saved, but if you fully apostatize after baptism, you can't. You're not allowed to rejoin the church at that point. Because even trying at that point would be blasphemy. Even going into a church if you fully apostatize is blasphemy. And where do I get my standard? Because my standards are pretty strict. Even though, I don't hold other people to them because I'm not an authority to do that. Because it's my belief that the Bible forbids me from a claim to, even if I get ordained, I'm not a pastor because I fail the biblical qualifications. And I'll always fail the biblical qualifications because one of them is you have to have become a parent and raised a kid at least once. You got to prove that you can handle your own family first. And since I've never been married, I can't be the husband of one wife, which I interpret to mean exactly one wife, no less and no more. Not just no more, but no more and no less. So I take this seriously, and I take it seriously enough that even other people who say they take it seriously have sometimes been put off by how seriously I take it. When I've said that I take Romans 13 so seriously that even if I were offered an exit on account of my mental issues from the government demanding something of me, I'd say I can't take that exit because my faith forbids it. Because to me, I don't believe in conscious objection, even if it puts me in a situation where I'm required to put my faith to the test. As it's a good thing I'd never be able to join the military. And it's a good thing, there's no draft in effect. I mean, yeah, you gotta sign up for the selective service thing. But it doesn't really do anything. So it's like, well, what would I do if I got drafted? Put me in a conundrum. Can't accept it, can't reject it. And can't take a third option because ending it early is blasphemy of the Holy Spirit. Which I base on the fact that we refer to in the Nicene Creed the Holy Spirit as the Lord, the giver of life. Deliberate ending of one's own life is telling the Holy Spirit to take a long walk off a short pier. And I've taken some things seriously enough to spook people. Like when I said that if I were to be permanently thrown out of a church, I said, at that point, not only am I already damned to hell, but I've become a contagion that damns everyone I come in contact with. And that's, of course, what I see as the only exception. If you're already damned to hell, you can't damn yourself any further. Because it's a 1 or a 0. You either are or you aren't. And I said, if I were kicked out of church and damned to hell, by that, my only choice would be to end it, because if I didn't drop the meat bag as soon as possible, I'd be corrupting everyone I come into contact with, be damning other people. And, if I ended it right then and there, drop the meat bag, I'd only have one person lost, and that's me. And I've had people say that's a rather extreme approach to take. Why would you say that, if you were kicked out of church, you need to self-immolate? And I point to those verses in Joshua that talk about the curse of Achan, who became an anathema. Note that I said an anathema, as in anathema as a noun, not anathema as an adjective. He became cursed. He became a cursed object by stealing a cursed object. And anathema is described as something that's dedicated to a deity, in this case Jehovah, in such a way that it has to be obliterated from the cosmos. That's why stoning wasn't good enough for Achan. He had to be torched after he was stoned. And I said, if I ever became an anathema to prevent other people from becoming anathemata because they talked to me, because they interacted with me, the only solution was a lighter and some naphtha. And of course people are going to think that's extreme. That's an extreme take. Would I hold myself to it? Absolutely. Because that's how I read this. We have this saying, the Bible's our final authority in all matters of faith and practice. You know what I say? I say the Bible is our first line and final arbiter in all matters of faith, practice, and doctrine. And that's an extreme stance, apparently. But that's something I hold to. And you'd probably be surprised to find that from someone who you wouldn't think would be a Christian at all, let alone a mainliner. Even a mainliner isn't going to be that strict. You're hardly even going to find an evangelical that strict. But I stand by it. Because I take this seriously. And I don't want to be responsible for destroying anyone else's soul. Anyway, Jesus freak out.